Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. This is Mahalea Marshall from the IQ Consortium Secretariat. I'd like to thank you for joining this morning's webinar entitled Considerations for Contract Study Timelines, Issues, Solutions, and Impacts, presented by the IQ3Rs Leadership Group and the CRO Working Group. Before I turn things over to Letty Medina, and our esteemed presenters, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping items. First, our webinar today will include presentations by Donna Clemens of AbbVie and Patricia Turner of Charles River Laboratories. Presentations and the Q&A session will end at approximately 12 p.m. Eastern Time and will be followed by a lively 30-minute roundtable discussion moderated by Letty Medina and Natalie Bratcher, both of AbbVie. Second, you'll see a panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Clicking this orange arrow will collapse or expand the control panel. Next, taking the following steps will greatly reduce audio feedback. Voice over Internet Protocol participants, those joining via their computers or laptops, please use a headset and keep wireless devices away from your computers. Those participating by telephone, please enter your audio pin shown here so that we can mute or unmute your line should we be receiving feedback from those on the phone. Next, our question and answer session will start after the presentations have concluded, but you can submit your questions by writing them in here in the question bar of your control panel. We will also be muting and unmuting the lines of individuals who can virtually raise their hands using the control panel again. If you have any questions, go ahead and just send them in by chatting a message to me that you'll also see at the bottom of your control panel, and I will try to get back to you with an answer. Finally, I would like to just provide the antitrust admonition. This webinar is subject to antitrust guidelines adopted by the IQ Consortium Board of Directors. These guidelines require us to steer clear of any discussion any commercially sensitive topics such as pricing or market shares. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Letty Medina from AbbVie, who will introduce our speakers today.
Thank you, Mahalea. It is my great pleasure to introduce our two speakers today. So Donna Clemens joined AbbVie in 2011. I've had the great pleasure of working with her for the last 7 years. She is the Global Director of Comparative Medicine, bringing more than 20 years of experience in the area of veterinary care of research animals, biomedical science, and research to her current role. As Global Director, she is responsible for animal care and animal research support for AbbVie animal research functions. She received her Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree and completed a residency program and a master's degree in laboratory animal science at the University of Missouri, before joining Covance Laboratories as a laboratory animal veterinarian. She held various management positions with oversight of animal care programs and veterinary medical staff at Covance, ultimately serving as Vice President and Global Chief Science Officer for Veterinary Medicine and Animal Welfare, where she was responsible for animal care and welfare at facilities across the U.S., Europe, and Asia. Dr. Clemens is board certified in laboratory animal medicine and has extensive experience in research colony health management, regulatory-driven toxicology, national and international regulatory compliance, and facility operations. She currently serves on various professional committees focused on government and regulatory issues in animal research and serves as Vice President of the American College of Laboratory Animal Medicine. Our next speaker is Patricia Turner. Dr. Patricia Turner is a laboratory animal veterinarian and pathologist who works as Corporate Vice President, Global Animal Welfare for Charles River Laboratories. In this role, she is responsible for assessing welfare risks and developing animal welfare policy and related training for the company's sites around the world. She completed a BSc in biochemistry at McMaster University and a master's in pharmacology at Dalhousie University prior to a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree at the Ontario Veterinary College. After 2 years of mixed practice, she returned to the University of Guelph for a doctorate in veterinary sciences degree in comparative pathology. Dr. Turner worked as Director of Animal Care Services and Assistant Professor of Pathology at Queen's University, and later worked for Warner Lambert and Pfizer as a toxicology team representative in preclinical safety testing. More recently, she worked as a tenured professor in the Department of Pathobiology at the University of Guelph, where she was also program leader for laboratory animal science with teaching, research, and diagnostic responsibilities related to animal welfare, toxicology, and comparative medicine and pathology. She is a diplomate of the American College of Laboratory Animal Medicine, the American Board of Toxicology, and the European College of Animal Welfare and Behavioral Medicine. She is current president-elect of the World Veterinary Association and an author of over 150 peer-reviewed papers, chapters, and books on animal welfare and comparative medicine and pathology. So as you can see, both of these speakers have a vast amount of knowledge and experience to lend to this wonderful topic. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Donna Clemens.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Letty. I'm going to be getting us started here and then handing it off to Pat a bit later. But I want to thank Letty and Mahalia for getting us started and setting this up today. And say, everyone, welcome to this talk and discussion on contracted study timelines. First, a few words about this project and about the IQ Consortium. I think everyone in our audience is familiar with IQ Consortium, but perhaps not so much with this CRO outreach group. This is a working group within the consortium that was dedicated to identifying and improving the relationships and collaboration between pharmaceutical companies and their very important CRO partners, with the specific goal of facilitating our common focus on the 3 R's, animal welfare, and most of all, quality scientific results. This presentation is an introduction to a training program developed for the internal use of research organizations. This was developed to help facilities build awareness of how factors, and in this case specifically, study timelines, can impact animal welfare and the quality of the science. Our goal is that these priorities be aligned more effectively and for the best overall outcome. So as said, this training was jointly developed by pharma companies and the CROs. We did it as a best practice exercise. We attempted to identify the needs of both the pharma and the CRO, look at how those goals and sometimes competing priorities are being managed, and ultimately suggest ways that both can work together for a more satisfactory outcome. While the focus was then on the pharma and CRO relationship, the creators of this project strongly believe that there's going to be other applications for these principles, including collaborations between companies and collaborations with and between academic institutions. So we have a broader audience. So as a representative of the consortium, Pat and I would like to welcome you to the webinar again and remind you that both of us will be available for questions at the end of the day today, at the end of this webinar, and by direct contact at a later time. So back to today's audience. Mahalia, please. Yeah, there we are. So everyone, just beg your indulgence, is that I am having trouble with managing the controls and slides, so Mahalia is helping me with advancing these. So today's audience, this presentation goes through much of the material that's in our training set, which, by the way, is being made freely available for use at any institution, research institution that wants to use them. The users are welcome and are actually encouraged to take what we are providing and tailor it for their own use at various institutions. The users are welcome, are actually encouraged to tailor it, use their own real-life experiences from their own work. Again, as I said, you can contact me for a set of slides, which will include some suggested speaker notes to help you get started. The presentation is really for everyone who works in the process of creating and conducting animal research studies. We hope this might help that all the individuals involved share a common vocabulary for discussion and recognize together that there's areas for alignment. Next one, Mahalia. Thank you. So everyone has their priorities, and they are important. Why did we opt to focus on the study timeline specifically? In the process of examining this collaboration experience and partnership, where we had a lot of discussion between the CROs and the companies involved, we found that the theme was around time, was repeated over and over. This is clearly a point of struggle and competing priorities. It's a potential source of conflict, and it can become divisive at times. But we also found that people are acting in good faith, and that improved understanding of the consequences of decisions led to better communication and to decisions that were readily accepted by all the parties. Next one. Yeah. So number one, how do we go about setting up a study? This does impact the quality of the data. The animal research studies are complex, and communicating that complexity along with the impact on the outcome is critical. Next, there are two places where that impact is the greatest: in the planning and review stage and in preparation for actual study conduct. I'm going to briefly look at both of these areas with examples as to how and why we can affect the data for better or for worse. Here, this regulatory implication. This is one place where the planning and review have a major impact. Pat will actually go through some examples later in the program regarding the regulatory implications of changes that are made. But how important is this? Well, some recent information regarding citations and noncompliances found on USDA inspections shows that more than 1/3 of all USDA cited noncompliances at research facilities relate to planning and review gaps. So critically important to how we approach that stage. Planning is obviously to most of us more than just ordering the supplies and maybe having your test article ready, but it also means prepping of the study team and of the animals. Unprepared animals and staff can undermine the best study designs in the entire world. We all know that. It can result in lower quality or unreproducible data. It wastes your time, it wastes your effort, it wastes animal lives, and it wastes our business resources. Staff that are inexperienced or in need of refresher training on a procedure or are less familiar with a particular species can make incorrect observations, miss important collection intervals, or even perform a dose incorrectly. Animals that are not in animal health or not appropriately habituated or prepared are also not likely to produce the top quality data. So again, back to our purpose. The decisions impacting the study timelines are made for many reasons, and all too frequently they're made without understanding the full impact on animal use, animal welfare, or the quality of the data being produced. Sometimes the decisions are made by individuals that are far removed from those conducting the study, and communication is lacking. Sponsors, the pharmaceutical companies, frequently have much greater insight into the patient's need for a medicine and into the business drivers, which creates a strong sense of urgency. The CROs are strongly business motivated to meet the needs of their clients, and both are bound by ethics to use animals judiciously. By providing in our training some insight and terminology, we hope that the risks and benefits of timeline acceleration or change will be, it's not always acceleration, I put change in there too, will be considered in conjunction with scheduling and business drivers to arrive at a more fully considered study plan. Okay. All right, so beginning here, many of the slides that we are discussing are actually part of the training set. We've inserted onto these sets, I may have mentioned this at the beginning, we've inserted into the training set itself notes to instructors and suggestions for group participation that we think are helpful. But at the same time, we encourage you to use them, not use them, change them as you wish. This is meant to be a starting place. Many people in this organization, as on this slide, you will see, influence the study design and timing. It's important that everyone involved in the process understand that their role and their decisions do impact the quality of the study and animal welfare. choices made with the best of intentions can have downstream impacts that are not readily apparent when viewed alone. These are the individual roles we've identified that have the potential to create unintended consequences on the quality of the study or on animal welfare. So those are who we think should participate, but why would they participate? What is in this training for those participants? Well, this training is intended to give these individuals some additional tools for analyzing and discussing where they might see impacts from their timing change and help them weigh the pros and cons before proceeding. Many times in my career, I have had discussions with people and heard, well, I just didn't realize that that was going to happen, or I had no idea that that would be the outcome of this. Let's help them with some tools to have that right discussion at the right time. Ultimately, though, everyone will participate because they have a shared goal of having quality data, interpretable outcomes, responsible animal use, and to make decisions that are more fully informed.
Number is incomplete. The link is not working for them.
All right, the 3 R's is a concept, I think familiar concept to everyone on today's webinar, but they represent an attitude philosophy that embrace the necessary but careful and responsible use of animals in research. Organizations such as OLA, ALAC, USDA, the Home Office, and the European Union all support and actually require researchers to consider the 3 R's in making decisions regarding their study designs. So we wouldn't have to cover this in great detail for everyone in a training group. Many people are going to be familiar with it, but there still may be value in a participation opportunity here. Some questions that we have recommended include asking individuals in a training group to offer examples of where the 3 R's have been employed in their work and have some examples ready that they might be able to share.
Try to send you that link. So
again, more detail, an area of discussion on the 3 R's, but an area that's worth having in here because it can be very impactful. This one would be a place where we would ask individuals to give examples from their own work. We find that individuals often are employing already the 3 R's without even realizing that they're doing that. They don't connect that to the concept. So this is really to go through the concepts of replacement, reduction, refinement, provide an important participation opportunity. Okay, let's talk about the studies themselves. There is a lot at stake for both parties in this relationship. The fast pace of drug discovery and development creates strong pressures on companies that are striving to meet the needs of patients whose lives depend on the progress we're making in creating new treatments. Furthermore, as public companies, both CROs and pharmaceutical companies have a fiscal responsibility both to their workforce and their shareholders to maintain value and stability. It would not be reasonable for us to overlook that important fact. This is an important place where there is a lot of participation opportunity as well. We can ask questions such as, can anyone think of examples where a study timeline was critical to a regulatory filing or a business decision? Did this impact that study, or did it impact other studies that you were performing? Harmonizing expectations can lead to a better product, smoother working process, reduced conflict, and ultimately the best use of all of our resources. But how exactly do we do that? It brings us back to basic principles of communication, partnership, and respect. And with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to my partner, Pat, to take us through a number of specific examples related to partnership and challenge.
Great. Thank you, Donna. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the factors that influence the timeline for running a study and completing a study at a contract research facility. And on this slide, we talk a little bit about several really important things that impact the timeline. The first being the animal or the availability of the model. And of course, for particular studies, there may be requirements for animals of a certain age or weight. And some studies require very specific ages, but others have a little bit more leeway and room. having a bit of flexibility in these areas can be very helpful in avoiding delays, but certainly contract research organizations understand that specific age groups might be required for regulatory or other reasons. So, there's an understanding that maybe there isn't flexibility in this. It's just important for the sponsor to remember that special requests may take a little bit more time to accommodate. So, for example, having a group of animals that are time pregnant, genetically modified animals, animals that have undergone instrumentation with vascular access ports or other things, or having animals that are trained to specific procedures are going to take more time. They're not sort of a pool of animals just ready to go on those. The test article availability is a really important point, and it's something that is really important to think of when planning. If an adequate supply of the test article is not available, this shortage may result in significant delays, and this can increase the costs as the rooms are tied up before the study can even begin. Animals that have been ordered for these studies will continue to age and grow, and this can impact the amount of test article that's needed, or it can even require the purchase of a new set of animals if the original animals go out of specification for a particular study. So this is a really important area to consider. If the stability or solubility or homogeneity questions, if they're not addressed prior to the first use in the study animals, we can see complications that can result in unnecessary loss of animal life or delays in the study start. And if information about the test article regarding the impact on the animal or occupational health and safety are missing, then the internal oversight body, so that's typically the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee in the US, although it might have a different name in other countries, Animal Ethics Body, they may be unable to approve a study protocol, and this can result in delays in the study start as well. An IACUC, of course, can't approve a protocol without sufficient information to determine the potential impact on animal welfare and on human health. So it's no different for a CRO than it is at any other institution. All the regulations and requirements have to be followed at those institutions. Sometimes it can be helpful to run a pilot study or a feasibility study. For example, if it's a new vehicle or formulation, and that can actually save time in the long run. And these are all considerations that need to be discussed. Space in an animal facility in a contract research organization, it's booked very much like a hotel room, and changing study space requirements may result in no rooms being available. So capacity is typically booked at a very full level at a contract research organization, and the ability to add an extra room of animals or an extra procedure area can sometimes be quite limited. So there's very little wiggle room when there's delays or if there's a need to increase groups or sizes. And often studies are booked, months to a year or more ahead, so it can be difficult to be flexible in these areas. Other factors that can influence the timeline include availability of some subcontracted specialty services. So if individuals need to be pulled into the study to add their expertise in different areas, such as neurology or radiology, or if there's other consultants that need to be brought into the study. The missing information for IACUC review, as Donna mentioned before, this is a really important area. So if information about things like test article, dose levels, or the vehicle information is missing, then the IACUC may be unable to approve a study protocol, and this can result in delays in study initiation.
So,
the responsibilities of the IACUC or animal welfare body are specifically spelled out in national regulations around the world, as well as in the Guide for the Care and Use of Laboratory Animals, which is a reference resource for ALAC, which is the major international accrediting organization for animal care and use programs. An oversight authority can't approve a protocol without sufficient information to determine the potential impact on animal welfare. And the official actions of the IACUC, such as protocol approval, they have to follow the same processes, which include involvement of a quorum of the committee. So the study director or site manager can't approve a study to begin without appropriate IACUC approval. And, you know, an example of this, in the UK, for example, there are very strict requirements for the use of non-human primates in studies. And the scientist who wishes to use non-human primates in studies must demonstrate that they're being used for very serious and potentially fatal conditions in humans, and that there's no other model available. And so these are strict requirements, again, that the IACUC would have to approve, regardless of how the study director and the sponsor feel about the use of those animals in that study. And we'll come back to a couple of other examples of IACUC related issues in a few slides. It's in everyone's interest that the staff who will be working on a particular study are fully trained and experienced in the procedures and with the animal species and the particular ages that are going to be used. And of course, this includes not just the technicians, but also the veterinarians and study directors. So if there are going to be procedures that are done or animals of specific ages that aren't routinely used, it's really important that there be sufficient time for training or refresher training for personnel to avoid unnecessary complications during the performance of the study. And by allowing this little bit of time for training, we can try to avoid complications and delays in the study. So an example of this. Rodents and rabbits as well. So those are just some examples of those. Okay, the more complex, whoops. Mahalia, I'm having problems advancing the slide. And if you can go to the next slide, thank you. The more complex the study design, the more time that will be required to schedule and execute the study. And this is, again, just something that needs to be thought about. So there may be imaging required or other types of exams or timed events that are in the study. And this requires a lot of thought. Once the scheduling is completed, subsequent changes or amendments in that study are likely to lead to further delays, possibly increased resource expenditure, and can increase the chances of error, particularly if these are being done at the last minute. So time spent on really planning the study in great detail will provide really good dividends during the study conduct.
Well, I need to speak with them. I can't use their voice.
Great, thank you.
Going on.
The 3 R's, of course, as Donna mentioned, they are the cornerstones of research animal legislation in most countries. And animal use, as everyone is aware, is only acceptable when there is no alternative for this. And this is all part of what the IACUC is reviewing as part of the regulatory compliance. So the responsibilities of the IACUC and the oversight body, these are defined by regulations and guidelines, and how the IACUC fulfills these requirements, they are reviewed and inspected by regulators, accreditation visitors, and by sponsors. Failure to adequately fulfill oversight responsibilities puts an institution at jeopardy of regulatory citation, and it can impact the organization's accreditation status and also be seen as a very negative event during sponsor audits, resulting in a finding or even a loss of the ongoing partnership. So there's really a great deal at stake when considering the level of internal oversight. The IACUC at the contract research organization may also request refinements in the study design during the review. So this is, again, part of why it's really important to ensure that there is adequate time for this review to occur. In some countries, for example, in Germany and Switzerland, protocols need to be reviewed by individuals who are outside of the contract research organization, who may be working for regional and federal governments. And for that reason, amendments can take many months for approval in these cases. And this needs to be taken into consideration when planning the studies, hopefully to avoid these sorts of amendments at the very beginning, to avoid unnecessary delays in the study. So there are ways that organizations, whoops, can we go back, please? Mahalia, can you go back, please?
Hey, Chris.
Thank you. There are ways to mitigate the impact of trying to abbreviate these timelines. We can try to define major and minor protocol changes that can really help to speed up certain aspects of the review. Using a designated member review system can help to, with the processing. Using a standing or generic protocol can also help with this. But even in these cases, typically IACUC approval is required for specifics of each test article that may be used. Okay. When we think then about the timeline and its impact on science, there are a number of things that we need to think about. And it's really critical to consider adequate preparation of animals for a study. Not attending to this impacts animal welfare and the quality of the data that can be obtained from this. So we have here on this slide listed a number of things that need to be considered in terms of preparing animals and staff for studies. When we think about lack of adequate animal acclimation, this can cause negative impacts on studies, such as increased variability in study data due to animal stress during procedures, an increased chance of dosing or sampling error due to animals struggling during handling, an increased chance of animal injury during handling, decreased animal welfare, and perhaps even suboptimal data that's generated. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about preparation for animals to study in the subsequent slides.
I've got a presentation.
When we rush staff training, this can also lead to complications such as dosing or sampling errors, data collection errors, and other things. So it's important, again, that we ensure that there's adequate time for staff training. And operant conditioning, which I'm going to come back and talk about a little bit later, that means that in addition to habituating animals to procedures that are going to be done, animals may actually be trained through the use of positive reinforcement to voluntarily participate in certain aspects of the study activities. And an example of this might be a monkey presenting a limb for blood collection or a pig voluntarily walking onto a scale for a body weight collection. Obviously, this kind of training takes some time, and it's more appropriate for some species than others, and usually for longer-term types of studies. And then finally, animals that aren't in optimal health at the beginning of the study, they're not going to provide the optimal study results.
This is a webinar.
And so paying appropriate attention to animal health and conditioning prior to study start will help to avoid a need to repeat studies.
Hold on.
So I want to define a few of the terms that I'm going to be talking about in the next couple of slides, just so that we're all on the same page.
It's a webinar.
When we talk about acclimate in terms of animals, this is a passive physiologic adjustment to a new environment. There's no learning involved with this. Sometimes it can just be, it's maybe setting up animals and there's new social groups. It's getting animals used to a new facility and its routines. So it's a passive process, but a very important one that helps animals, gives animals time to settle in. Conditioning refers to putting animals into a state of health, of course, vaccinations, deworming, that sort of thing, and that may be required for certain species. Quarantine is, of course, isolation of suspected animals, suspected infected animals or those of unknown health status. And it can be just monitoring those that we think may be healthy for a period of time to ensure that they are healthy and fit for use. Habituation refers to learning, and in this sense, it's usually in which repeated exposure to a certain stimulus leads to a decrease in responsiveness of the animal. Another name for this is desensitization. And an example of this might be an animal that might be used in an inhalation study where the animal needs to learn how to sit quietly for an extended period of time that might be then required subsequently during the inhalation period. And then the last definition I wanted to mention is operant conditioning. And this is another example of learning in which a response is elicited by a stimulus and then is reinforced. So for example, the example I mentioned before, the training of a pig to walk onto a body weight scale and receive a reward, that's an example of operant conditioning. And this is also done a lot in pull and collar training with non-human primates. This requires staff with specialized training and skills in animal welfare and behavior, and it requires additional time depending on the procedure, the species, the numbers of animals to be trained, and typically then this will entail additional resources for these particular studies. It's important to keep this terminology in mind because it can be used incorrectly and can create misunderstandings within the study teams. So I'm going to just provide in the next few slides some additional examples of these.
You asked if I was able to.
Next slide, please. So acclimation, as mentioned, refers to this resetting of homeostasis when animals are brought into a new facility or put into new social groups. And it's really crucial to good science. And this slide really contains a list of the sorts of parameters that can be affected if acclimation is inadequate. And as you can see, circadian rhythm disruption, heart rate and blood pressure variability, metabolism alteration, cortisol levels disruption. You can see that these are all things that can have a very critical impact on the quality of the data that are generated in a study.
3 people.
Acclimation and quarantine can occur simultaneously in some cases, but the intent and the purpose of these two periods are quite different and shouldn't be confused. Typically, animals that are undergoing acclimation are minimally touched or manipulated during this particular time. Okay, conditioning, next slide please. Conditioning involves getting the animal into an appropriate state of health prior to study. And it assures that the animals are in a constant optimal state. Mahalia, can you advance the slides, please?
You know what, I cannot pay attention. I have to pay attention to the
Thank you. And it minimizes the potential impact that conditioning procedures also might have on study data. So that's why it must occur before the study starts. And again, on this slide, we have some examples of what can happen when animals are inadequately conditioned to studies. So again, variability in metabolism, impact of parasites or other things on body weight, on
at the end of the
food intake and other things, and of course vaccination or other forms of immunization and routine practices. All of these things can help to prevent adverse health impacts during the course of a study. And animals that may require conditioning include pigs, non-human primates, dogs, and other species as well. Next slide, please.
And
habituation and operant conditioning. These are really important areas in which we see actually increasing focus by sponsors. Sponsors are very interested in these areas, and of course, our current animal welfare philosophy places an increased emphasis on cooperation of animal subjects during research. Some of the research benefits of animal training and technique acclimation are described in this slide.
so that one group can join.
And I think it's just important for everyone to remember that animals don't come pre-trained wherever they're coming from. A contract research organization purchases them in for individual studies, just as they would be done by any other facility using animals. And so they have to start from scratch as well in training these animals. The benefits of this, though, can be really important for study outcome. So it can reduce animal stress and potential for animal injury, reduces the potential for human injury from bites and scratches, but also from ergonomics related to having to lift animals and move them around versus getting animals to move voluntarily themselves. It increases engagement of staff, and it means that they are more attuned to changes in animals. And this is really important for maybe subsequent subtle changes that may occur later on in the study. It minimizes changes in procedures and housing and social structure when these are done, but it does result often in increased time and therefore increased costs when these occur. Habituation and operant conditioning certainly can benefit all species, but at this point they are more commonly used in large animal species and for more longer-term studies. Okay, there's a great deal of emphasis on personnel training by ALAC and within the 8th edition of the guide, and really for good reason. Inadequate training of personnel can lead to increased mistakes, less reliable data, and impaired animal welfare, whether it's due to errors in sample handling, poor animal handling from technicians maybe that lack confidence, or from underdeveloped sampling techniques. Doing things well takes practice, and practice takes time. And this concept is just as important, if not more so, for surgical modeling. Rushing recovery time results in collection of data from animals that may still be stressed and healing from surgery, and this can lead to increased variability and decreased data reliability. Similarly, surgical models that haven't been fully developed can result in increased animal morbidity and mortality and inadequate reliability of the instrumentation that may be used during the study, and clearly that can impact the quality of the data. If animals are going to be instrumented for a study, there may need to be additional time built in for habituation to jackets and things that may be required after the surgery. So it's not just the surgery itself, but it's also other things that may be related to the devices and things that may be used. And also it takes time to develop a reliable surgical model and the optimal post-surgical support that may be needed to maintain the model. Post-operative support and care can make or break the surgical model, even if the surgery itself is flawless. And it requires an adequate number of people for anesthetic monitoring and perioperative care, as well as sometimes individuals on call to come in for follow-ups, equipment alarms, and other things. So this procedure and model development is really important in terms of overall quality. Quality science depends on reliable data, and reliable data depends on minimizing variables. Stress or distress of animals is a variable that not only has a negative impact on animal welfare, but it also has far-reaching impacts on animal physiology, which is a significant issue for toxicology studies, which are investigating the impact of test articles on physiology. So rushing the timeline on animal studies has the potential to cause unnecessary animal stress in several ways. It can be a failure to develop clear and well-defined humane endpoints, and this can result in unnecessary animal suffering, but also less consistent or poor quality necropsy data. Animals that are allowed to proceed to a state of extremis or moribundity, they're compromised due to physiologic shutdown occurring within the animal. And animals that are found dead are generally lost to the study and wasted, since no clinical pathology can be taken from them, and the necropsy data is often written off because of poorly preserved tissues. So taking the time to develop humane intervention points for provision of supportive care can really benefit the study by resulting in more consistent animal care and decreasing the rate of animal decline. Full disclosure about compound history and adverse events allows the IACUC at the Contract Research Organization to perform sufficient risk-benefit analysis. We've talked about trying to shorten timelines for quarantine periods or for surgery as well, and these can certainly result in a lack of reliability of data. And of course, there's an increased regulatory expectation to socially house animals, but this means also that pair and group formation and stabilization needs to occur before the study starts. Internal stress, incompatibility, and aggression between animals can occur as a new structure, social structure is being established, and there needs to be a little bit of time for that to occur as well. Too many procedures in too short a time can also significantly and adversely impact animal health and welfare and the study outcome. And these are all things that need to be taken into account when planning the study. Okay, so consistency from both the sponsor and the CRO is particularly important where long-standing agreements are in place. And this serves to reduce errors that may be caused by miscommunication. So some areas of consistency that can be addressed proactively include things like identifying the contact person for different issues with the study, determining how data may be handled, providing protocols and things in appropriate formats, as well as other needed study information, and ensuring that there are opportunities for follow-up and timely feedback. Consistency is the key to reproducible data, and this helps to ensure that it's reliable. So time is critical for building consistency into two essential factors that have the potential to introduce significant variability in a study: animal stress and personnel training and skill level. It's important to be aware that some processes can't be rushed without having a negative impact on the quality of the product. And so these overly ambitious timelines and study plans or untested innovative procedures with unexpected results, these can lead to project delays rather than progress with a particular compound or program. Okay, so how do the sponsor and the CRO, how do they cope with these timeline pressures? It's certainly important for the sponsor that modifications to study plans are made as timely as possible. But of course, the sponsor needs to understand the regulatory environment that the CRO is also working in, and if changes fall outside of CRO guidelines with regard to timing, the sponsors should be aware of the consequences before they request these changes. CROs can try to streamline some aspects of their timelines and really try to examine which activities really are required and really add benefit to the study, and look for whether training requirements are supported by literature or historic data. But it is important for both groups to really respect and discuss the full implications of trying to push studies forward quickly. So there are some examples of the types of communications that should be covered. And this is really sort of a checklist of points that should be covered between the sponsor and the CRO to minimize negative impacts on studies and to ensure that both parties understand the need to comply with regulations. Having this kind of discussion also helps the CRO better understand the needs of the sponsor and better position themselves to try to meet those needs as well. So in summary then, sponsors and CROs are really partners with a common goal of producing meaningful data within a timeline that benefits the business of both organizations and that respects animal welfare and regulatory compliance requirements. Maintaining good communication and respecting these timelines is really necessary to generate quality work that helps us to achieve these goals together. I'm going to pass the presentation back to Donna for some summary comments.
All right, thank you, Pat. Everyone, just one last reminder here. There are many R's that we can cite as being important to research programs. We talk about the 3 R's, but I often like to push some of these into the discussion as well, and like to end with this slide today. Also want to thank Pat, my co-presenter, Letty, our moderator, and Mahalia for her excellent assistance with the slides today, and also our other panel member, Natalie Bratcher. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Letty. But one last slide. Let's go to the last one, Mahalia. And we'll end on this actual slide here. Anyone wishing a copy of the slides with speaker notes and our participation suggestions can contact me or through the IQ Consortium, and I'll be glad to provide those. Thank you again to the audience and to the IQ for providing us the opportunity to present this information and for sponsoring this webinar. All right, Letty, back to you.
All right, so I'm going to actually let Mahalia explain something about credits for this webinar.
Thanks, Letty. So many of you may be looking for continuing education credits for participating in this webinar. You will see on your control panel there is a sign-in sheet posted as a handout. If you would please, especially if you're in a room where there's a group of you who are joining the webinar, make sure you sign that sign-in sheet. Make sure you have your in and out time, your email address, and a signature so that we can forward those along to Tom Leach, who's will be coordinating continuing education credit. Tom Leach is with the New Jersey Association for Biomedical Research. I've also sent it in an email. I sent it yesterday in an email. Some of you may have received it today. If you are unable to find it or unable to download that sign-in sheet, let me know and I'll send one to you, and then you can just follow the instructions on the email that I send in terms of submitting that to Tom. And I'll just go ahead. Before I let it go to Letty, I just want to say that if you have had any issues with this webinar, I know that some of you may have had difficulty joining, or maybe your colleagues have had a difficult time joining. We do have a recording, and we will be circulating the slides. At this time, I'll go ahead and turn things back over to Letty, who can open up the Q&A session. Please remember to write in your questions or raise your virtual hand, and we'll go ahead and unmute your line.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to ask that if anybody on the line has a question, that you would use your little hand icon and raise your hand, letting us know that you have a question to ask, or even type in the question and it should be able to pop up so we can read it. And that way we don't have too much chaos of interference from different people talking over each other. The first question that came in so far, from your perspectives, Donna and Pat, what are the 2 or 3 areas for improvement, either science or welfare, where we might be able to come together to impact meaningful change in practices or strategies? So Donna, maybe I'll just start with you. If you have maybe one area for improvement where you think we could come together to impact meaningful change in practices or strategies for addressing these contract study timeline issues.
Oh, that's a great question, and one that we could talk about for a long time. I think in order to narrow this down, I would reference back to some of the other projects that we're working on with the CRO outreach group. And that includes looking at areas such as how we harmonize on dose volumes and on blood collection volumes and frequency. Those are areas that we frequently see a mismatch in expectations, internal and external. So I think we've made a lot of progress on that, but I think as an industry, we still have a long ways to go. Another area that I can recall from my own experience has to do with really around the acclimation time. Unfortunately, when times get short, that's an area that seems to be ripe for collecting a few extra days from without enough consideration for the long-term impact on the study. I'm sure we could come up with a bunch more, but those are ones that hit right the top of my mind as big opportunities and places where I think we really can address those. They really should not be that difficult for us to come to agreement in those areas. Pat may have some other ideas as well, though. I wouldn't want to take all the time.
Pat, can you?
Yes, thank you, Letty. And yeah, Donna brings up some really good points, and it is a really good question. And it brings me in mind of a comment from Paul Finmore from AstraZeneca as well. I hope it's okay and appropriate to bring that in here, but he talks about sometimes the salami slicing that can occur with animal welfare when studies are contracted. And as Donna said, it can be due to time, but also there's additional cost involved. And I would agree that behavioral management and specifically habituation and training of animals to procedures is probably the it's a very important area that has not been explored as much as it could be. It does take time. It requires staff that are trained in these techniques as well so that they can train them with animals, but it has a huge potential impact to minimize risks for animals and for humans and to improve the quality of the data that's generated.
Absolutely. Okay, the next question that I want to raise, and I'm going to raise this because I know that it's an issue that we recognized recently in a survey that we conducted, asking some questions of both pharma companies that do a lot of contracted animal studies and CRO partners that handle a lot of those studies. I want to hear from both of you, Donna and Pat, about your thoughts around a written veterinary care plan and how important that could be with regards to animal welfare support. Donna, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start with that. Is the folks that are on the phone who may know me or may have remembered from my the introduction that Letty gave is that I worked for a long time in the CRO world before I moved over to working in the pharmaceutical business. So I think I have a pretty good handle on both sides of the equation here. So sorry, Letty, I've lost my train of thought there.
Oh, just the veterinary care plan and how
veterinary care program, yes. So yeah, I was still thinking about blood volumes. So yes, the veterinary care program. Okay, I've seen the study plan or the veterinary care plan for studies done very, very well, and I've seen them done very, very poorly. And they're extremely valuable when they're done well. And by done well, I mean not just the veterinarian writing the plan well, but I mean having enough information from the study director and the study monitor to be able to address the real likely incidents that could occur in the course of the study. I think it's too often that they're writing these in something in a vacuum, only to find out later that there were indications of certain types of adverse events that might have been expected, but that no one was adequately prepared for. So when there is full communication and a lot of disclosure about what might have happened with compounds in the same class, with the previous studies with dose range finders, it puts you in a much better position to define endpoints, to define where interventions may or may not be appropriate, and to really know how you're going to be able to proceed. Without that, you're just writing a document that says, well, if something goes wrong, we'll try to do something. And we're going to do that anyway, so that winds up not being very helpful.
Yep. Pat, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think Donna has stated this really well. It can be very valuable when it's done well, and it's important, and that, to have that sort of specific support does require trust between the sponsoring organization and the CRO to share that information. But it is definitely in the best interests of both organizations and certainly for the animals that will be on those studies.
Okay, thank you. Another question that came in is, how do you feel this training could be most beneficial or better shared across the industry for the most impact? Donna, would you like to try and share thoughts on sharing this training a little bit more broadly, or?
Yeah, let me take a stab at that. When we first rolled this out, first of all, this is not new. It's had some minor updates, and Pat and I are going to do a quick, before we distribute it again, we're going to do a quick review to make sure that what we send out has these minor updates in it. But when we first rolled this out in 2015, we, I think, distributed it to around 36 different organizations. I tried to keep track of those, and we did collect some feedback from them. On the other hand, how can we get that out there and make this most beneficial? It's really up to reaching the right people and the right organizations. I think the veterinarians in facilities are in a very good position. If there is someone in a role of an animal welfare officer, they're also in a very good position to work with this training program, but it needs the support of management in those facilities. If there's not internal interest in, and by that I mean support of people in more senior positions to have these individuals participate in training, it's simply not going to happen, not with even the best of intentions. So I think it has to go back to that, is do you have the management support to bring that forward? And that would make this the most beneficial.
Great point.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think the individuals that are sort of involved in the sales and the contract aspect don't necessarily have the same background as the personnel working on studies, the study directors, the veterinary care teams. And this information is really important as part of their training as well, so that they are not promising on either side or asking for things that are impossible. They need to fully understand the implications of the requests and of what they're saying. And we have seen this happen where individuals have, sort of made guarantees on either side, and then it comes to the IACUC, and the IACUC rejects something. So it is important that there is a really good awareness and training for the individuals who are involved in the negotiations on both sides.
That is excellent, point, Pat, because when this was originally developed, that was exactly the audience that we had in mind, was the individuals who needed this communication at a more basic level. And some of this is going to seem very rudimentary to the people who are much better versed in science and who are familiar with aspects of the study. And that's why we've encouraged people to take it and modify it. You don't have to give the same version to all audiences. A lot of that can be minimized, can be skipped over in favor of other factors. But we really put a lot into this. I would say we, the developers of the training, really put a lot into reaching people just in that group that Pat was talking about, the business people who may have had little contact with these aspects of the science.
Yeah, that's really important. I don't see any other questions coming in. Let's see. Oh, wait. What are the biggest challenges for both CRO and pharma industry? Or are we well aligned on identifying the challenges in order to also identify opportunities to refine the timeline, strategies, and practices? So I'll read that one more time. What are the biggest challenges for both CRO and pharma industry from their different perspectives? And are we well aligned on identifying these challenges in order to also identify opportunities to refine the timeline, strategies, and practices to optimize welfare? I'll actually throw in this one comment to address that. We did just conduct a survey. I want the people on the line to know that the CRO Outreach Working Group of the IQ Consortium did conduct a survey asking questions about humane endpoints and supportive care strategies. So that's one of the opportunities that we've identified is, can we be a little bit more aligned in our understanding of how supportive care strategies can really benefit the animals without affecting the scientific data in a way that, could, hurt the study outcome. And so again, sharing more of this information, sharing some of our experiences of how we've supported animals on study that have had some clinical issues, and how has the FDA responded to that supportive care? Has it been well received? Have they ever pushed back? Those kind of things can really benefit the whole industry and align us better on the way we provide supportive care measures. So that's one example that I wanted to throw out there. I don't know if Donna or Pat has anything to add.
Let me make just a little jump in here. As I was kind of pondering the wording of that. That's a pretty complex question there. And coming back to the part of it that says, are we well aligned in looking at our opportunities for refinement? And I guess my answer is, well, that depends. I think that there is a wide variety of relationships that occur between the pharmas and their CROs. Some of them are very close partnerships to the point where they almost operate as one, and there's a lot of trust. They know each other well, and it goes all the way to the other end of the spectrum where it's a very maybe rare transactional interaction where here's a fee for service, please do this for us, and we're done. And there's very little relationship going in or coming out. So I think that the opportunities for alignment really depend on the closeness and the continuity of that relationship. Then in terms of one thing I wanted to bring forward about this is that there often is, though, a mismatch in terms of internal expectations of the sponsor and external expectations for what they demand of the CRO where the work is being done. And I don't think that we're always fully transparent or frankly honest about acknowledging that mismatch can exist. So I think that really, being very straightforward and addressing that is a place where we have a big opportunity.
Yeah. Pat, did you have anything you wanted to add, or is?
Yes, sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself, but I would agree that mismatch, of course, sponsors have a range of experience, just as CROs do, and studies come in from academia, from very small startups, as well as big pharma. And so the understanding and background of organizations when they're looking to bring a study to a contract research organization, the diversity in the background and understanding of issues and things can be quite varied. As Donna mentioned, those having free discussions, and about expectations on both sides is a really important way to try to narrow that gap between the sponsor and the CRO.
Exactly. One of the questions that just came in is, where can those on the webinar that are not part of the IQ Consortium learn about the IQ Consortium and the CRO working group initiatives and deliverables? So, I'll just field that very quickly. So there is a website, iqconsortium.org, O-R-G. So you can go and read a little bit more about who the IQ Consortium is and the different working leadership groups. The 3 R's Leadership Group is the one that has the CRO outreach working group within the leadership group. I don't know, is there anything else, Mahalea or Donna, that you can add to that beyond the website?
There is a LinkedIn group, but it is incorporated with the LinkedIn profile. So you would actually have to be a member of IQ for the LinkedIn group. But there is a LinkedIn profile that folks can follow. Just one point of note, though, there are criteria that one organization needs to meet in order to become a member of IQ, but that criteria is also noted on the IQ website. So if folks have any questions that they can't have answered via the website, they can certainly contact me and I would be happy to help them.
Thank you.
And maybe this is a good point to kind of clarify for the listening audience too, that the CRO partners we refer to in this partnering outreach working group is that the CROs are not members of IQ Consortium. It is for biopharmaceutical companies. However, recognizing how important they were, we have invited them to participate in very specific activities as invited participants. So just to kind of clarify how that relationship exists.
Exactly. Thank you, Donna. I don't see any other questions coming in. I wanted to throw in just one comment, and that is to just say that being part of the IQ Consortium and then also being part of the CRO working group of the 3 R's Leadership Group has been a very worthwhile endeavor for me personally. And what I certainly have learned over my many years in the field is that benchmarking and sharing practices with each other and learning from our peers that are very, very smart people, our colleagues that are very smart and figuring out ways to address some of these challenges. We need to talk more. Communication and alignment is really, really helpful, because I can say very honestly that when I've seen other companies, especially other pharma companies, that have adopted changes in their practices for housing or for socialization, things like that, it has helped me to make the case stronger for why we also need to do it. Sometimes we're the ones who lead the change, and then our peer companies call us and say, can we use you as an example about why we need to change? So just encouraging anybody who's on the line who hasn't done a lot of benchmarking, who isn't part of a consortium, stay connected with your colleagues and reach out and learn from each other, because truly it has benefited me more times than I can tell you. And it helps so much when we stay together, especially as biopharma, to really kind of grow together in the way that we want to do the best animal care and use practice, no matter where the work is done, internally or at a CRO. With that, unless Donna or Pat have any final comments, and there's no other questions that I see, I think we can pull it to a close. All right, well, thank you both, Donna and Pat, for your time in presenting this important webinar for us. Thank you all who have joined online. As stated earlier, you'll have access to the video recording as well as the slide deck. And don't hesitate to reach out to Donna Clemens or Pat Turner to ask additional questions if you have them later. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Donna and Pat. Thank you, Letty, for moderating. Thank you, Natalie, for also being with us as a moderator and organizer. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to reach out to the IQ Consortium, and the recording of this webinar will be made available in the next day or so. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks a lot, Leah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie, you're going to stay online for a little while?
I am, yep.
Okay.
Tom, if you're still on, you can certainly stay on and unmute yourself.